Welcome back to Somatic Exercises, part number 7 by Peter Levine. I found the actual book itself. It's a very short book. It's like 115 pages. So Peter has the audio files for this. There's 12 audio files, and then there's also like a 100-page book. It's called Healing Trauma by Peter Levine. Today we are on video number 7, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm probably going to come on 3 times today because I want to finish getting through this series. So yeah, today we're going to go through healthy aggression and the immobility response. I did a post on tonic immobility not that long ago. You can see it has the picture of the lizard or like the little gecko or whatever on its back. That's another really great, that's a great written post resource for what it is that we're going to be doing today. But, hey everybody, thanks for being here live with me. I want to give a little shout out to my neighbor boy, the boy that lives next door to me, because he actually watches these videos and he shows some of these self-somatic exercises, I think, to his friends. That's what he was telling me the other day. So that's actually pretty cool that there's like a 10-year-old, I think he's 10, going through some of these exercises. So shout out to you. And for those of you who might be new here, or if you're not familiar with this series, this is a 12-part series. I started this several weeks ago. The first video is the one with all the curly hair on top of my head. There's a reason that these are layered the way that they are, because of, well, it's very intentional the way it's laid out. So basically start at the beginning and then work your way to this point, if you're just joining now. So I keep looking over here because I am going to be referencing the book directly today, just because I found this. I'm like, this is great. Phase 7, Part 7, Healthy Aggression and Tonic Immobility. All right, let's get into it. So, aggression is an innate and natural response. It's a resource that protects us when we are threatened, and it is also a force that mobilizes us to action and propels us forward towards our goals and our desires in life. When people have been traumatized, they are stuck in paralysis, the immobility reaction, or abrupt explosions of rage. Because of this, they lack healthy aggression that they need to carry out their lives effectively. Nature has designed us like this, like most other animals, to access aggression when we need to defend ourselves and when we begin to emerge from immobility. So this is really important, that aggression, or which might be even coupled with anger, happens when an organism comes out of immobility. So you better be able to act quickly. Like, imagine if you're caught by some type of a predator and you're immobile and they step away for a moment, because that happens, right? So much of this research has come out of observing biological life forms and how they're interacting with each other. So what happens is that, let's say a gazelle gets carried away by a cheetah and it's not actually dead, and the cheetah goes to bring its young over to feed on the gazelle. That gazelle has one chance to get away. And this is the same, right, for human beings. So think about things like inescapable attack, or any kind of a threat that's going to bring on that innate response to conserve energy and go into a freeze. When we come out of that, we're going to have one chance to get away. And so that aggression that we need will come through. But the thing is, right, is that a lot of people get stuck, and this is what that post about tonic immobility talks about, is a lot of people get stuck in that freeze response, and they're actually living their life in a functional freeze, not realizing that part of them accessing, and this was also something I talked about in the aggression post, it's like part of us actually being able to move through immobility and freeze responses means that aggression is going to come up. And in a larger kind of social construct or context here where we don't really allow that, or we see anger as being bad or wrong, you can see how this becomes a problem, right? Because it pushes people back down into the freeze response. And so people actually do this to themselves unconsciously, where they will start to create fear. They will be afraid of coming out of that immobility because of the level of aggression and life force energy that's actually under that. But I want to, right, that reframe is really important. And what Peter's talking about here is really important because he's saying that it's life force energy. It's the energy that we need to actually go propel us forward towards our goals and our desires in life. And this is why there's, people who can be so locked down in that freeze response, and they can feel like they don't have the energy to actually do the things that they want to do. And people might say, oh, they're just lazy, or it's like, it has nothing to do with laziness. We need to actually move the organism out of that tonic immobility. Tonic immobility is a little bit different because tonic immobility is like total freeze. Human beings very, very rarely will go completely and totally into a freeze response. You typically have some level of sympathetic activation online. If you didn't, you would basically stop breathing. Okay, so nature has designed us like this, like most other animals, to access aggression when we need to defend ourselves and when we begin to emerge from immobility, right? So that we can defend ourselves. This only makes sense because if the predator is still in the area, counterattack may be all that we have for defending our lives. Traumatized people generally have become fearful of their own aggression, hence when they begin to emerge from immobility with its inherent aggression, they suppress this life-saving aggressive response. The suppression has the consequence of throwing them back into the paralysis, right? So this is what I was just describing. Thus, with their aggression aborted, they remain fearful of re-engaging in life. Wow. With their aggression aborted, with that life force energy aborted, they remain fearful of re-engaging in life. Let's really just take a moment to kind of let that sink in. Often traumatized people either feel nothing or they feel rage. And often the rage is expressed in inappropriate ways. By beginning to get a sense of what healthy aggression feels like, the extremes of numbness and rage can begin to give way to a healthier middle ground. So in the last part of the series, when we were working with pendulation, which is the movement between two things, this is why it's stacked this way, you see, because once we're getting into these kind of heavier emotions, we want to have that skill set. We want to be resourced. We want to be able to pendulate. We want to be grounded. We want to have a deep connection to our own physical body as a container, so that by the time we get to this point, we're not just throwing somebody in the deep end. We're not throwing ourselves in the deep end. So there are some exercises that I'm going to share with you in just a moment, but let me finish going through this. So by beginning to get a sense of what healthy aggression feels like, the extremes of numbness can give way, of numbness and rage can eventually, we begin to find ourselves in this middle ground. The following exercises are basically going to help us to establish feelings of healthy aggression and empowerment, which creates a positive channel for the emotions that might surface. And as with all these exercises, do these after you are grounded and centered. So, right, we might even go back into some of those earlier videos, like I was saying, or referencing the work that you've already built up with that. Centered, grounded. So let's go into the exercises for today. These are actually partner exercises. And this is important. I really like the partner exercises because a lot of the trauma that people experience, like where is it coming from? It's coming from the relational field. So we get to start to renegotiate some of this stuff within the relational field. I wish that I had more people that I worked with in person, because this is exactly the kind of stuff that we could work with when aggression or life force energy starts to come up into the body. Now, one last thing I want to say before I go into these exercises is that let's think about the larger context of all the things that I've been sharing about and that other people have been sharing about disempowerment, right? Disconnection and disempowerment, disconnection from ourselves, from our own life force energy, as well as disempowerment. These are the types of things that I'm talking. This is because this healthy aggression, this life force energy, has been largely suppressed within people. They're kind of still living in that trauma response. This is so important, right? Because if we can get in touch with this and we can do this within the relational field, this is healing. And the thing is that, and I've said this before in the other videos, we don't want to just practice this stuff when we're dysregulated. We want to be able to build these skills in moments when we're not dysregulated, so that we actually have access to it. Because what we know, right, about these survival energies and the way that the brain and the body function together is we lose touch with our prefrontal cortex, with our frontal cortex, when we go into survival mode. So the more that we can start to build these things in, the more space that we're going to have between the stimulus, the sensations, feelings, and emotions that are coming up in our body, right? We want a gap between that stimulus, the sensations, emotions that are coming up in our body, and then the action that we're taking. We also want a gap there, right? That's what allows us to have more choice in what we're doing. So working with the nervous system is just one way that we get to access greater choice, that we get to come into greater coherence within our body. Parts work is another way too that we start to get into choice, because we're moving what is unconscious into the consciousness. A little bit of a side note there. Valuable though. So, okay, the two exercises, the first one that you're going to do with another person is called a push hands exercise. And there's two different ways to do this. The way that I was originally taught was actually hand to hand like this, but I'm going to say that I would actually probably start with just one. So because I don't have another person here, I'm just going to have to do this to the best of my ability. But so let's say another person comes in. I'll read the comments in just a second. So if you guys have any questions or any comments when I'm done with this, we'll go through that. Okay, so imagine that this is somebody else's arm and they come in. Let me actually see if I can show you let me show you the photo, right, of Peter here. So you can see in this image, he's got this woman over here, right? They're just by one hand, and if you can see this up close, they're just like this. Now, okay, so this requires two people, the pusher and the pushee. Place the palm of one hand comfortably against the palm of your partner's hand. If you are the pusher, now the pusher, right, is going to be the person who's working through the healthy aggression. If you're the pusher, begin to feel strength and force arising from the center, from your center of your body. Start slowly exerting pressure on the pushee. Push as far as you'd like while keeping your balance. The pushee's job, the person who's receiving the pusher, is to simply be there and provide the resistance necessary to meet the pressure by mirroring the pusher's strength. So the pushee is just mirroring the pusher's strength. Some eye contact is beneficial, but too much can be overwhelming. Now let's think about why that is. Why would too much eye contact be overwhelming? Because it puts the person who is the pushee, the person who is receiving the pusher, right? The pusher's the one who's renegotiating. So if you're the pushee, you're receiving them, what you're doing is you're helping that person to become re-empowered. Now, people might not understand why this is like such a small exercise, but we're working with the physiology. These survival mechanisms, these incomplete trauma, these incomplete survival responses we're never able to complete. So we get to complete them now. The nervous system doesn't actually know time, which is why the nervous system continues to be triggered by these things, because we're still, that state, that incomplete state is still just living within the system. So if the the person who's receiving that, right, who's really trying to help bring back up the power in the person who's pushing, if they're staring like really intensely, right, and you've got this, you have a predatorial kind of, you see how that might counteract what we're trying to do here. So a little bit of eye contact, great, but look away, right? And here's the other thing. If you start to feel the pusher, backing off a little bit or like losing their balance, right, then you match that. You're just matching the energy. You might avert your gaze. If I were working with somebody one-on-one, I would probably, I'm not going to be like, whoa. I'm probably going to be a little bit more soft, a little bit more gentle, a little more docile, not as predatorial. That's important. So take turns playing the role as the pusher and the pushee. When you are the pushee, it sounds like, if you sense that the pusher is collapsing or backing off, right, reduce eye contact until you feel the pusher has regained his or her strength. Decrease resistance slightly from time to time to determine if the pusher is maintaining his or her balance. So this is something that I was actually taught to do with two hands. So that's something you can do as well, right? You might work your way up to that. And I have actually, with a previous partner, I had a moment of, I went into a freeze response, which is less common for me now, but it used to be a lot more common. And went into this freeze response, and as I was just totally like, this used to be really common for me. I would just like totally dissociate, like something relational would happen and I would just shut down completely. My voice would go very monotone. I would stare off into space, and I just felt completely shut down and numb. And I didn't know, like, because this happened for years and years. So I obviously didn't know for the longest time anything about the fact that aggression was going to come up. Now that I know this, I'm almost like expecting that. And I'm not creating it, like I've seen it. This is very real. And so I had this moment where I remember I was like sitting on the floor, my back was up against the fridge, and I was like totally shut down, but I was just allowing it to happen. I wasn't like shaming myself or anything. I knew what was going on, and I knew I would come out of it. And when I started to, the numbness started to wear off, that freeze started to thaw out, I started to feel this like aggression and this anger. And instead of, because I was aware of it, now I get to do something, right? That's the thing about choice I was talking about. And so I asked my partner at the time, I was like, can you do this exercise with me? Can we do the push hands? And it was so, like, I can feel in my body as I'm even just remembering that, there's like emotion there. There's like, it was an emotional release, like that experience of, because I wanted, and actually the freeze had been brought on because of the relational conflict that had come up. And so being able to actually, with the person that it had come up with, be able to renegotiate that with them, right? Not be aggressive towards them, because full transparency, like, I grew up in a household where physical violence and stuff like that, I wasn't like beat, but like, yeah, like I was hit and stuff like that. That was, my parents were a kind of aggressive with certain physical violence. And so I learned that behavior. And I had a history of, I had physically assaulted people in my life. Like, this helps me to have a space within the relational field, right, where we get to channel that energy. And hopefully if we're in conscious relationships with other people, they're open to this, right? They don't want us to fucking attack them. They're probably going to be more than likely to say, oh, hey, you're consciously coming out of this freeze response. Here's this anger and aggression. Let's do it together. If you don't have somebody there, you can push against a wall. You can put yourself on the bed. You can actually push your bed with your whole body. I've done the wall thing. That's also great. Okay, so the last little piece here is a back-to-back exercise. And so let me see. Back to back. Okay, so start with your back against your partner's back. So I'm going to show you this other image here we've got. You see them back to back. Start with your back against your partner's back while maintaining the feeling of being grounded. Feel the inner support in your upper and lower back. If you experience some gentle shaking and trembling while sinking into the support, just allow it to happen. Take all the time that you need, then slowly begin to push. As in the first exercise, the pusher determines the amount of force while the pushee offers a matching resistance. Feel the power coming from your legs and center. So this is just a little bit of a different way of doing it, right? We're focusing more on the contact of the back, the center support of the body, the feet on the ground, and again, we're just matching that. The thing I think that's great, and probably why Peter has this back to back, is it's much less confrontational, right? We're not eye to eye. We also have this ability to escape, right? Like we're oriented towards the exits. And again, just that support also. There's something about the support of having somebody else's body there and matching that energy. Yeah, that's it. Probably later today, like not even that long from now, I'm going to jump back on and do part 8 and then probably part 9. We're going to get crazy and do it all today. All right, so I will see you guys a little later for the next piece. I hope you're all doing well and see you soon.